Hi everyone, for those of you who don't recognise me, my name's Libby. I'm part of the client services team here at Supermums Consulting.
Hi, I'm Mel Debenham. I'm General Manager for Supermums Consulting, and I lead a team of fantastic ladies that are out there supporting people trying to find their dream jobs within the ecosystem.
And the reason you see our face on your screen today is we wanted to do a little bit of a summary for you of why we would recommend using a recruitment service or a recruitment agency to support you with your next career path, really. So Mel, I'm going to hand over to you. Could you just do a little bit of a summary for everyone who may not know of what Supermums recruitment service is and how they could use it?
Absolutely. So many people will know Supermums for the fantastic training programs that we offer. So ultimately, our mission as an organisation is to champion women in tech and to promote flexibility in the workplace. So our training team are there to support people that want to move into the ecosystem. We've got a fantastic admin certification course, which is great. But the recruitment team, which obviously, Libby and myself and a group of other ladies are part of, were really established to be able to support initially our Supermums coming out of training and in finding them their first opportunity within the Salesforce ecosystem. But as we've grown, not only do we place Salesforce admins, we also place more experienced admins, developers, technical architects, Salesforce consultants, project managers, and so on.
Fantastic. So I guess in line with all of that, what our recruitment service is, how we can help everyone that's on potentially this live today. What are the benefits really? What are them 6 good reasons? Get us started with one of them reasons today of why people should use a recruitment agency.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Libby, how much work, how much effort goes into trying to find your next and or a new position when you're at that point in your career where you're on the lookout for a new role. It can be quite a daunting task. Sometimes you'll send an application, sometimes you don't hear back. You've got to sift through job boards, you've got to find potential openings, you've got to make those applications. And hopefully you don't, but sometimes you've got people that are almost sitting around for the phone to ring as well. So there's loads of benefits of working with a recruiter. It doesn't mean that a recruiter will ultimately take over and be your only source of finding a job. You still need to work hard to get your details out there, whether that's because you're improving your LinkedIn profile, you've opened your status so that it's open to work. But actually working with a recruiter can really help you save some time and find that right job. So in terms of saving time, as I mentioned earlier, you can spend absolutely ages working through a job board to find the right opportunity. But if you use a recruiter and you use them well, you're actually splitting the workload. So as well as you trying to find that opportunity, think about what a recruiter's job is. We spend 8 hours, sometimes more, during the day, trying ultimately to find candidates for our clients. So clients, commissioners, they want us to find that candidate. So we're in the market all the time. We know what jobs are out there. We know what's happening in the marketplace. But as well as knowing that jobs are out there, if you're registered with a recruiter, well, the recruiter also knows that you're out there and that you're available. So it will save you time in terms of that job search.
And what about from my experience, I have used a recruiter myself to actually get into quite a few vacancies. And I actually ended up at this position here at Supermums, fully enough, through an agency, as you know. And I can vouch for the benefit massively from a preparation perspective. So I found that I got so much support from interview preparation, getting so many tips, insight on the business. Can you tell candidates a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, once we've got a candidate in process, and what I mean by that is we've talked to a candidate about a job opportunity, the candidate would like us to present their details. Ultimately, what we do doesn't stop there. So we will work with you as a candidate throughout the process. We will help you initially format your CV and make sure that it looks good. We will present your details to the client. When the client comes back and says, look, we'd love to interview that candidate, we will work with a candidate at that point. So we will do interview preparation. So that's giving a candidate some further information about the organisation, about the people that's going to interview them, a good rundown of the job, and not forgetting, as well as the job itself, we've also found out a little bit more about the culture of that organisation, what it looks like, what it feels like to work in that business. And therefore, ultimately, by the time a candidate gets to interview, they're absolutely fully prepared. Obviously, we can't do the interview for people, but actually we can help improve the resume. We can help make sure that interview techniques are understood and put into practice. So we give a candidate every possible chance to promote themselves as best as they possibly can when they get to an interview. And even at that point, it doesn't stop there. So once that interview has taken place, we would always ask the candidate to come back to us with feedback. How did they find the interview? What do they think that they did well? What do they think that they could have improved on? Were there any questions that they were asked that they struggled with? So we'll get all of that feedback before we then go back to the client. And when we go back to the client, ultimately, we want the client's feedback. But if somebody didn't do a great job with a particular question, we can cover that off at that point.
Fantastic. I think something you've touched on a little bit there is a topic of communication. I don't think people realise how much insight we have on what is really going on behind closed door with a client. You know, when you're applying through a job through Indeed or through LinkedIn, you know, you're very much one of many candidates. I'm sure you'll agree with me here, where you don't really get much insight of the process. And like you just said about how the culture actually runs, you may get, you know, maybe one phone call, a couple of meetings, and then you kind of get an offer. Whereas, you know, with us, you do actually, or with any recruitment agency, you will kind of get a little bit more of that insight. And the communication is so clear, from feedback, from, you know, making sure that ultimately we know from every single step of that interview process, you know, how did the candidate find it? How did the client find that candidate? And I think communication is such a massive benefit of using a recruitment agency. You really know what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. And we act a little bit like a middle person. Yeah, if you're applying for a job yourself and you get that interview, there is an element whereby you're going into it very cold, because it's highly unlikely that before that interview you've spoken to anybody in the organisation. So actually the kind of info that we can provide a candidate with is so beneficial for somebody to actually understand more about the organisation and actually at least have an insight into, do you know what, this sounds like the right place for me to be. It sounds like it's a good challenge. It's going to offer me development, but equally, you know, a candidate has got some information that so they become a bit more armed and dangerous, if you like, before that interview.
Absolutely.
And of course, you know, you can get people that are interviewing quite often. You know, you may have gone through 2 or 3 or 4 interviews, but actually the benefit of working with a recruiter is the information that a candidate will get around interview techniques. It's invaluable.
Absolutely. And, you know, talking from my personal experience here, I don't know if you agree with me, but if you apply directly through an employer, I'm not saying this is every single time, but I have found that it's quite robotic, because you don't actually get to know the client and they don't get to know you as a person. You know, they're so rushed. They've got so many candidates on the go, so little time, that they don't really get time to ask all them personal key questions. Because ultimately, you know, they've got that really important end goal in mind. Whereas when they're going through us, we really put that across and really ensure that they know, you know, what your personal circumstances are, what priorities you have in your career. And that's why, like, in an onboarding call, which if any of the people watching this have ever had an onboarding call with us, you'll know how thorough that is for us and why it's so important we ask them questions. We're not asking it just because we're nosy. We genuinely want to know, you know, what your life goals are, what your circumstances are, because we want to share that with the clients so that your mission aligns with the clients and you've got the same values.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's not just about finding somebody any job. It's about hoping to find somebody the job. And I think, you know, in my years of experience in recruitment, and they're vast now, you know, 75% of people, when they leave a job, they never leave the job. You know, how many times do you hear of somebody that gets a new job that's very similar to their existing job, They're not really moving jobs, they're moving from their company or they're moving from their boss, and they're the biggest reasons for moving on.
Absolutely. And do you think there's any benefits from a network perspective? You know, there's so many candidates that go through our process and may not realise that there is a networking benefit from working with an agency. So what could you add to that?
I think working with a recruiter opens you up to a bigger network. If you think about your own personal network probably comes from your current employer and your work colleagues. It comes from past employers and past work colleagues. It might come from, I don't know, people for Supermums. It might come from, colleagues or alumni on a course. It could come from university. Professors, and it can come from family and friends. Yeah. And actually, if you sat and looked at your own personal network, it might seem that there's quite a lot of people in there. But actually, by using a recruiter, even if you think that your own personal network is a large group of people, it doesn't by any stretch of the imagination match the networking potential of what a recruiter has. So working with a recruiter, you can really take advantage of their connections and get the most out of your job seeking efforts. A lot of the time, we are aiming to place people in their next job, but there's also a lot of times whereby people just come to us because they want to use our network in terms of, I've got an interview here, do you know anything about them? And I guess, from a recruitment consultant's point of view, if you don't know the ins and outs of what a recruiter does, we spend a lot of time making connections, whether that be on LinkedIn, whether that be on our database, phone calling people, face-to-face meetings, networking events. We're constantly building that network. So the minute that we've actually got a candidate that's available and is wanting us to help them look for work, we pull on that network straight away.
Fantastic. And so just to kind of summarize here, are there any other benefits that you can think of? I know there's so many, but we came on here to list off what we think are our top 6. Are there any other benefits that you think that we should list off today?
I think one of the biggest ones working with a recruiter, it's giving you much more access to job opportunities. Yeah. So what you see when you are applying or looking at job adverts, you're only seeing, actually you're skimming the surface of the jobs that are available. Recruiters will have organisations that will come to them as a dedicated resource. So they don't have an internal infrastructure to place an advert, to sift through CVs. They come straight to a recruiter. So often they don't even advertise that job opportunity. So unless you're working with a recruiter, the potential of you seeing or knowing that job there would be, your chances of knowing would be very, very slim. Yeah. So maybe an organisation will post out a job on their website, but a lot of organisations strictly depend on recruitment companies to help them source and find candidates. So the biggest thing for me, or one of the biggest things, is that keep doing what you're doing in terms of searching for work, but ultimately utilising a recruiter allows you to improve your knowledge of what jobs are out there in the marketplace. And I would also probably add into that, recruiters really earn their money at the point whereby you are offered a job opportunity, because if they're any good and they're worth their weight in gold, then ultimately it's that they're there to negotiate on your behalf. So talking to a recruiter, you will talk to them about, this is where I'm sat on salary. They will give you a really good appraisal about whether or not you're being realistic for the job and the experience that you've got. And when it comes down to it, they will always know what your walk away point is in terms of a salary that a client might offer you. But equally, the work that they've done with a client, they will know the walk away point from the client in terms of what's the maximum that they're likely to offer. And they're genuinely about getting you the best deal. So as long as a candidate is realistic about their experience and their salary expectation, a recruiter will do a really good job to make sure that they find their best deal. And sometimes when you're applying for that job opportunity on your own, you're much more nervous about that negotiation piece. And that's where working with a recruiter can really help you.
Absolutely. Well, I think this is a massive amount of food for thought for everyone that's watching, that's for sure. Definitely makes you, you know, remember everything that we do on a day-to-day basis, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
That's for sure. But I hope it's been valuable for anyone who has been listening. Thank you so much, Mel, for adding all that value for everybody. And hopefully we will see you all very soon with some more tips and tricks that will help you all in the market. But thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all soon.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Bye.